Atlanta, September 16, 2024. The tranquility of the upscale Buckhead neighborhood was shattered when 4-year-old Lucas Whitmore was found locked inside a laundry room closet in his own home in a state of panic. Dehydrated, sweaty, and bearing marks on his arms, the boy was rescued by his father upon returning from work. The main suspect, Alana Brooks, 26, an African-American nanny hired by the family just a few months prior. The prosecution claims that Alana, in an act of retaliation following disputes with the child's mother, cruelly punished Lucas. A torn note, allegedly written by the boy, and Alana's silence for an hour after the incident fuel the suspicions. Now the young woman sits in the defendant's chair, charged with child abuse and unlawful confinement. The court is in session and it's up to the jury, to decide, is Alana Brooks guilty or innocent? The Fulton County Courthouse is packed. Press cameras are discreetly positioned at the back. The case that has divided public opinion in Atlanta is about to begin. Judge Margaret Holloway, known for her firm demeanor, enters the room. Silence falls. This court is now in session to hear the case of the state of Georgia versus Alana Brooks. The judge announces. The defendant stands formally accused of second-degree child abuse and unlawful confinement of a minor. Alana sits on the left side of the courtroom beside her attorney, Danica Fields. She wears a simple dark blue dress. Her hands are clasped tightly in her lap as she tries to control their trembling. Her eyes scan the courtroom, pausing briefly on Claire Whitmore, seated in the front row, clutching a handkerchief. Lucas's mother holds her chin high, but her eyes reveal pain and anger. Prosecutor Emily Cross rises with confidence. Your Honor, members of the jury, what happened that afternoon was an act of cruel neglect, if not intentional punishment. Ms. Brooks was responsible for a defenseless child, and for nearly 2 hours she ignored the mother's messages, failed to supervise, and allowed young Lucas to remain locked up, alone, frightened, and hurt. This is not merely negligence. This is abuse. On the defense side, Danica Fields waits for her turn. When the judge signals her, she stands calmly. What the prosecution will attempt to do here is paint a distorted picture of a devoted black woman, pitted against a powerful white family. Alana Brooks has a clean record, outstanding references, and demonstrated emotional bonds with the child. We will show that what happened was an accident, twisted by bias, misinterpretation, and a lack of direct evidence. This trial cannot be about assumptions. Judge Holloway leans slightly forward. This court will seek the truth based on evidence, and in the end, the jury will decide whether the defendant is guilty or innocent, according to the law. She strikes the gavel. The trial is now in session. Prosecutor Emily Cross adjusts the papers in front of her. Her posture is imposing, yet measured. She knows that every word will now be scrutinized. She steps toward the center of the courtroom, briefly meeting the jury's eyes before beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will show that Ms. Alana Brooks, who sits there so calm, so composed, acted with coldness. The victim is a child, only 4 years old. We must not forget that. She gestures, and the first witness is called. Claire Whitmore. Claire walks to the witness stand. She's dressed elegantly, her hair tightly pulled back into a bun. As she takes the oath, her voice is steady, but her eyes are already brimming with tears. Mrs. Whitmore, Emily begins, could you describe your relationship with Ms. Brooks? She worked for us for 3 months. At first, everything seemed fine. My son, he liked her. But over time, I started to notice things. A sharp tone, impatience, subtle things. And then, that afternoon, her voice falters. She takes a deep breath and composes herself. I left at 4:30. Lucas was fine, playing. When I came back, he was locked up, curled into himself, crying, with marks on his arm. How does a mother recover from that? The prosecutor steps closer. Did you try to contact the nanny while you were away? Yes. I sent messages asking for updates, but she didn't reply. I thought it was strange, but assumed she was busy. Emily holds up a cell phone. We have here the record of those messages, all sent between 5:35 p.m. and 6:15 p.m. No response. Alana was online. Kitchen camera footage shows her holding her phone at 5:10. After that, silence. The defense does not cross-examine Claire at this time. Next, the prosecutor calls the lead investigator, Detective Michael Jameson. He enters with firm steps, badge clipped to his shirt pocket. After taking the oath, he presents his findings. When I arrived at the house, the child was frightened and visibly dehydrated. The father stated the laundry room door was locked from the outside. We found circular marks on the child's left arm, consistent with being grabbed. We also recovered a piece of paper from the bedroom trash written in childlike handwriting, stating, "Auntie Alana locked me here for punishment. I promise I won't make a mess again." Emily displays an enlarged copy of the note. Soft murmurs ripple through the courtroom. "Detective, did the laundry room have any kind of lock?" "Yes, a simple latch lock that could only be engaged from the outside. A 4-year-old wouldn't have been able to lock themselves in and secure it from outside." "Was the defendant questioned?" "Yes. She claimed she was in the basement and assumed Lucas was playing hide and seek. Said she didn't realize he was in the closet." Emily turns to the jury. "The boy cried for over an hour, alone, and the nanny, his guardian, simply didn't hear him." She then calls a forensic handwriting expert, Dr. Susan Bellamy. "Dr. Bellamy, what can you tell us about the note?" "It matches the handwriting of a child Lucas's age. There are inconsistencies in pressure and line flow, which could indicate emotion, fear, or possibly guidance from an adult. Can you confirm it was written under coercion?" "Not definitively, but there are indicators that support the possibility." "That's enough. The doubt is planted. The note's emotional weight is clear." Now, Emily brings in a key witness, Melissa Grant, the Whitmore's next-door neighbor. "Mrs. Grant, what did you hear that day?" "I was watering my plants around 6 p.m. I heard crying. It sounded muffled, like it came from inside a closed space. It went on for a while, but I hesitated. With kids, you never know. It can sound like a tantrum." "Have you ever heard crying like that before?" "Not with that intensity." Emily presents a transcript of an audio recording from a neighbor's outdoor security camera. Though it captured no visuals inside the house, the audio matches Melissa's testimony, the faint, continuous sobbing of a child for over 10 minutes. The courtroom atmosphere grows heavy. Finally, Emily calls her last witness, Ruth Henderson, a former cook who worked for the Whitmore family for 6 years and witnessed recent tensions. "Ruth, did you know Alana?" "Yes, she was polite, but I saw Mrs. Claire be harsh with her. She'd correct her in front of others, complain about her clothes. One time I saw Alana leave the kitchen crying. Did you hear any significant conversations between them?" "Once Mrs. Claire said, 'If this girl doesn't learn how to behave in this house, she'll leave through the same door she came in.'" Emily nods, wrapping up. "Thank you, Ruth. No further questions." She returns to the center of the courtroom. We have here a series of clear indicators, a heartfelt note, a suspicious silence, physical marks, a door locked from the outside, and most damning of all, a traumatized child. The defendant didn't just make a mistake. She failed in the most basic duty, to protect. She sits. The impact is undeniable. Alana sits motionless, eyes fixed on the floor. The prosecution has woven a compelling narrative, a woman hurt by tension and resentment, who used silence and isolation as a form of punishment. But the trial is far from over. The defense has yet to speak, and with it may come new doubts that could shift the course of this story. Now it's the defense's turn. Veteran attorney Danica Fields rises with steady confidence. She walks calmly to the center of the courtroom, her demeanor almost maternal. "Your Honor, members of the jury," she begins, "what has been presented so far are suspicions, not certainties. The prosecution wants you to condemn a woman based on a questionable note, distant crying, and assumptions. We're here to show you another version, one that's been ignored because it doesn't fit the neat narrative of a nanny's grave mistake. But the truth is more complex." Danica calls her first witness, Eva Morales, the Whitmore family's housekeeper for over 2 years. Eva, a modest, middle-aged woman with a light accent, takes the stand. Eva, Danica asks, "Do you know Lucas Whitmore?" "Yes, very well. He's a smart boy, but also very energetic. He throws tantrums sometimes. I've seen him hide in the laundry room more than once." "Hide? In the closet?" "Yes. He likes playing there. One time I got scared because I couldn't find him. He was there quietly with a toy. Whenever Mrs. Clare yelled at him, that's where he'd run." Danica walks slowly in front of the jury. "Have you witnessed interactions between Alana and the child?" "Of course. She took good care of him. She was patient. He used to call her Auntie Lala. They laughed a lot together." Danica turns to the judge. "I'd like to submit a video from 3 weeks before the incident as evidence." On the courtroom screen, a video recorded by the nanny plays. Lucas is seen hugging Alana while she films a drawing he made. "This is the rocket we drew," the boy's voice shouts. "It's for Auntie Lala." Several jurors smile faintly. Eva concludes, "I never saw her hurt him, never." Danica thanks her. The prosecution has no questions. Next, the defense calls Cheryl Dawson, a former nanny for the Whitmores. She's young, white, visibly nervous but resolute. She takes the stand, breathing deeply. Danica is direct. "Cheryl, why did you leave your job with the Whitmores?" "Because I couldn't take the pressure anymore. Mrs. Clare is controlling. Nothing is ever good enough. And because she made racist remarks. Not always directly, but enough." "Can you give an example?" Cheryl hesitates, glancing at the judge, then replies. "She'd say things like, 'These girls need to understand this isn't their place.' And once, I recorded her." Danica submits a transcript of an audio file recovered from Cheryl's old phone backup. In the recording, Claire Whitmore's voice is clearly heard. "If these black women mess up even a little, I throw them out. I don't trust them with my son. They're all smiles, but one day they show who they really are." A heavy silence falls over the courtroom. Judge Holloway calls for order. Claire Whitmore avoids eye contact. Danica walks slowly, letting the weight of that quote linger in the air. "The state wants you to believe Alana locked Lucas out of cruelty, but what if the accusation stems from bias, from a judgment rooted in race and class?" She now calls Dr. Layla Robertson, a specialist in child psychology and behavior. "Doctor, is it common for children this age to hide or put themselves in uncomfortable places out of defiance or fear?" "Yes, very common, especially in environments with strict authority. Hiding becomes a form of refuge." And the note, "What did your analysis suggest?" "The language fits learned behavior. This child was taught to write apology notes whenever he made a mess. He could have written it on his own, as a self-defense mechanism." Danica then presents a drawing recovered from Lucas's room trash. It shows a smiling stick figure inside a colorful box. The caption in childlike handwriting reads, "Playing hide and seek." This drawing, made on the same type of paper as the note, shows Lucas use the closet in his games. There were no signs of struggle, no scratch marks or banging on the door. The prosecutor rises to object, but the judge allows Danica to proceed. We're looking at an imaginative child in a tense household, and a nanny turned into a scapegoat. The defense's final witness, Alana Brooks. She stands and walks to the witness chair. Her eyes are red, but she stays composed. The courtroom is silent. "Alana," Danica asks, "did you lock Lucas in that closet?" "No, ma'am, I would never do that. I loved him, like a nephew." "What happened that day?" "He was playing on the kitchen floor. I went to the basement to get an old toy he'd been asking for. I spent longer than I meant to, organizing boxes. When I came back, he wasn't there. I assumed he'd gone to his room. I never heard him cry. If I had..." She swallows hard. "And the note?" "I cried when I saw it, because I knew he wrote it out of fear. His mother always made him write apology notes. Once he spilled juice on the carpet and spent half an hour writing, 'Sorry, Mommy.' He learned that." Danica turns to the judge. "Alana has no criminal record, no history of aggression. Testimonies from all her previous employers, white and black families alike, say the same. She is caring and dedicated. There was no crime here. There was confusion. There was prejudice. And now they want to destroy her life over it. She sits. The prosecutor, Emily Cross, rises for a brief cross-examination. Why didn't you respond to Mrs. Whitmore's messages for nearly an hour? My phone was on the kitchen counter. I was in the basement. I didn't hear any alerts. I thought it was on silent. Cross presses. But when you came back and saw he was gone, why didn't you search more urgently? Because he'd hidden before. I thought he was playing like always. That was my mistake, but not malice. The judge cuts in, ending the day's testimonies. The defense has shaken the foundation laid by the prosecution. The note, once the case's central piece, now seems ambiguous. The recording of Claire Whitmore reveals a troubling bias that shadowed her relationship with Alana. The lack of hard evidence and the spontaneous behavior of a sensitive child cast doubt. In the defendant's seat, Alana holds back tears. The courtroom is split. What once seemed like a clear-cut case now reflects deeper tensions, racial, social, emotional. The trial is far from over. The atmosphere in the courtroom is heavy. The air seems denser as the trial nears its critical moment. With all witnesses heard and evidence presented from both sides, Judge Holloway grants the prosecution the floor for closing arguments. The jury watches closely. The audience holds its breath in anticipation. Prosecutor Emily Cross rises, adjusts her blazer, and walks to the center of the room. Her voice is firm but measured, as though she understands the gravity of what she's about to say. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she begins, we've heard many versions in this courtroom. The defense has brought speculation, interpretation, allegations of racism, and even children's drawings. But what you have not heard is a concrete, reliable, and objective explanation for why Lucas Whitmore was locked in a dark closet for over an hour, crying, sweaty, dehydrated, and with marks on his arm. This wasn't a game of hide and seek. This was abuse. She walked slowly before the jurors. Alana Brooks knew Lucas was her responsibility. She knew the child's mother had sent messages and didn't respond. She knew he shouldn't have been left alone. Yet, by her own words, she spent nearly an hour in the basement without checking where the child was. She raises the now famous note on a transparent clipboard. This note is not fiction. It's the voice of a 4-year-old trying to make sense of punishment. A child who writes, I promise I won't make a mess again, because he was left in the dark as punishment. The prosecution is not saying Alana is a monster, but we are saying she failed. And that failure endangered an innocent child. Emily turns to address the defense's racism argument. Yes, we must talk about racism. Yes, we must confront bias. But we cannot use those issues to erase responsibility. You don't absolve someone of a serious act just because society is flawed. Her tone lifts slightly. Mrs. Whitmore's words on that recording were unpleasant, but they do not erase her son's suffering. Distasteful opinions do not erase a marked arm. A difficult mother doesn't absolve a caregiver of duty. Finally, Emily concludes, the defense has painted an emotional picture. We presented facts. And the facts say Lucas was alone, locked up, hurt. That is abuse, and Alana Brooks is responsible. She returns to her seat. Silence hangs in the room. Now it's the defense's turn. Danica Fields rises slowly. She walks to the center, scanning the faces of each juror. Her presence is calm but resolute. She begins with a sentence that slices through the tension. You've heard a lot of certainty from the prosecution, but not one piece of real proof. She pauses. They want you to convict Alana based on a note that could have been written at any time, for any reason. A child trained to write apologies every time he makes a mess, a phrase his own mother used days before the incident. Danica holds up the child's drawing of the figure inside a box. Lucas drew himself playing hide and seek, told a staff member he liked hiding in that closet when upset. That's relevant. That changes how we read these events. She turns to the jury. The state mentions a marked arm, but there's no medical report claiming assault, no fingerprints on the doorknob, no footage of the act. Just silence interpretations, and convenience. Danica walks toward the defense table and glances at Alana. This woman has no history of violence. She's praised by every family she's worked for. Black, white, wealthy, modest, no prior misconduct. And yet here she is. Why? She raises one finger. Because Mrs. Claire Whitmore built an image of perfection in her home, and when something slipped out of her control, she blamed the nanny, because it was easier. And yes, because there's a pattern of firings, of selective mistrust, of microaggressions. The recording made that undeniable. The prosecution fidgets. Danica takes a breath. The prosecutor says words don't matter. But I ask you, what shapes our judgment more than the words we use to define others? If someone says, "I don't trust black women with my child," is that just an opinion or the backdrop of an accusation? She looks up, steady. The prosecution wants punishment, but they haven't shown a single image, a single eyewitness, a single direct piece of evidence that proves Alana locked that closet door. She ends quietly. The doubt you feel isn't coincidence, it's real. And in a court of law, doubt means one thing only: acquittal. She sits. The courtroom is still. Judge Holloway signals. Prosecution, final rebuttal. Emily Cross stands once more, with the same surgical control. The defense speaks of doubt. But sometimes doubt is just our discomfort with seeing the obvious. Lucas was found where he should not have been, with marks he should not have had, in a condition that can't be excused, and the person responsible was absent, and unaccountably so. That's the reality. She looks directly at the jurors. Do not overlook a child in the name of an abstract idea of racial justice. Justice here has a name: Lucas Whitmore, and he needs you to see what happened to him. Emily sits. This time, visibly exhausted. Judge Holloway grants the final reply to the defense. Danica rises one last time, without walking. Racial justice is not abstract. It lives in the details, in how a black woman is presumed guilty before evidence, in how a mistake becomes a crime, in how doubt becomes a verdict. She sits. The courtroom is silent. The words still hang in the air. The clash between the two sides was intense, legal and emotional. The prosecution built a case around responsibility and omission. The defense dismantled certainties and exposed bias. The courtroom is in absolute silence. No more witnesses, no more evidence. What remains now is the weight of decisions. At the center of the room, seated in her elevated chair, Judge Margaret Holloway adjusts her glasses and carefully studies the faces before her. The prosecutor who defended the victim's pain, the attorney who dismantled certainties, the mother trembling with restrained anger, and the defendant awaiting her fate with trembling hands resting in her lap. The judge leans forward. Her voice is deep, measured, firm. This court has listened attentively to all sides involved in this case. We've seen evidence, heard from experts, parents, employees, and witnesses from both the past and present. What lies before us is a case that revolves around a single question. Did Ms. Alana Brooks deliberately lock Lucas Whitmore in a closet as a form of punishment? Or was she the victim of a series of misunderstandings, worsened by social and family tensions? She pauses briefly, flipping through her notes. It is clear that there was a failure. A 4-year-old boy was out of the nanny's sight for too long. He was found sweaty, dehydrated, and frightened. The marks on his arm were confirmed, though it is not possible to say with certainty whether they were caused by excessive force, self-defense, or simply the rough play common among children of that age. The judge turns her gaze to Alana. Ms. Brooks presented a clean record. Former employers, of all ethnicities, described her as loving and dedicated. The defense exposed flaws in the prosecution's account and questioned the impartiality of the accusation, supported by a disturbing recording in which the child's mother expressed explicit racial distrust. This is a factor that cannot be ignored, not for its accusatory power, but for the context it sheds on the entire working relationship involved in this case. She now turns to the jury, her expression solemn. The prosecution argued that the child wrote a heartfelt note as the result of punishment. The defense showed that this same note may have been written of the child's own initiative, conditioned by prior teachings. The house's cameras were turned off, except for one. The closet door was locked, but there is no proof of who locked it. The crying was heard, but no one saw the act occur. In light of all this, the court acknowledges that this case does not rest on conclusive evidence, but rather on interpretations. The judge closes her folder, takes a deep breath, and rises. It is now up to the jury to deliberate. But before that, let me clarify. If found guilty of second-degree child abuse and unlawful confinement of a minor, Ms. Brooks could face a sentence of 2 to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 1/3, as well as permanent disqualification from working in any child care role. It is your duty now to determine whether reasonable doubt remains, whether the evidence convinces you that the defendant acted with intent or criminal negligence, or whether there is room to understand that what happened may have been the result of a tragic misinterpretation, exacerbated by family discord, unpredictable child behavior, and a relationship clouded by mistrust. In this trial, the verdict lies in your hands. Now it's up to you. Is Alana Brooks guilty or innocent? Leave your verdict in the comments.